Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name's Ardil and today is an episode of Sound Off. What Sound Off is where we go through the spec of the existing speakers that we have in a vehicle and compare them to what the products that are going into the vehicle in a little bit more depth than some of our other videos. So today's car we're talking about is a gorgeous Ferrari FF. So to start with, I'm going to go through what the existing system actually contains in a Ferrari FF and then moving over to the equipment that we've got going into the vehicle. So a couple of the components that we've got in front of me, there will be another whole separate video on the actual full install. So if you're interested in seeing a little bit more in-depth dive into the actual installation process of how we get a Ferrari FF sounding absolutely incredible, make sure you go check that out as well. But today we're talking about the actual components themselves. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of an explanation about different frequency ranges. Okay, so kind of a little bit back to basics, give you guys a bit of an insight for those of you who don't know and understand this part. We have a couple of different components in a vehicle. We have a tweeter, we have a 3-inch mid-range in the car, we have a 6.5-inch mid-bass, we have rear speakers, and then we've got a designated sub in the car. So first of all, why do the speakers change in size? Beginning with the tweeter and all the way down to the sub. So a tweeter, basically this deals with higher frequencies. It's all about that clarity, the definition of sound, and that is what that component drives. So the kind of frequencies it's playing is generally speaking from 2,500–3,000 Hertz upwards. So your human ears can hear from 20 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz, and that's the spectrum of sound that we deal with in car audio. So what we've got here is the tweeter. So we're roughly playing kind of 2,500–3,000 Hertz upwards, and every product has a certain point where it wants to play and where it's comfortable playing. However, so I had this question asked to me on Instagram the other day that I've installed a set of speakers, or my installer's installed it, and it doesn't think it sounds right. What should the frequency response be, and what frequency range should my tweeters or mid-ranges be playing? And my response to it was, yes, whatever the product is within the manufacturer's spec, like for example, the Hertz Legend range. This actual mid-range that we've got here, on the actual tech spec online, you can find it, it's very easy to find. Search up the name of the product and it will tell you what frequency range it wants to be playing in terms of whether it's a bandpass, whether it's higher frequencies, whatever it might be. In terms of that frequency range, the manufacturer will tell you. So there's one thing what the scope of the parameters of the speaker is. However, one really important thing to consider, and that's why I couldn't really answer the question. I explained myself that I couldn't answer it. Reason is because it's not just the product that you need to consider. You need to consider how you're powering it and also the application of the install. So how it's mounted into the vehicle, what sort of adapter you're using, location, all comes into it. And that is very, very important when it comes to higher frequencies. So what you've actually got here with the higher frequency, so kind of your mid-range and your tweeters, these deal with kind of that clarity, that mid-range and upwards, and that is kind of the definition. And this is where this becomes more important to be directional. So you might know of someone, or might be yourself, that's slightly hard of hearing. If you are hard of hearing, generally speaking, you'll find it easier, or if you know someone, you'll find this as well. They can normally hear you a little bit better if you're looking directly at them. Reason is because those higher frequencies that are in your vocal cords as you're speaking, your ears listen to what's in front of you. Your ear shape is in front of you, and that is why it's very important that your higher frequency ranges from your tweeters down to your mid-range are slightly more directional. Some vehicles don't actually allow for that. So the tweeter location on the Ferrari FF is actually right near down here, kind of near your arm when you're driving. And then your mid-range location is right on top of the dash facing the glass. Not great ideal locations for both those products. However, that's where things like the processor and the time alignment when we do the tuning of a system really does come in and makes a big difference. And this is where every spec as well of a system is completely customizable, and it's always down to how the owner wants their car done. If they want that OEM look, then that's absolutely fine. If they want to go down the route of a custom look, we can do that as well. So there's no kind of right or wrong as such, because that's the owner's choice of what they go down the route of, and also what level of components they want to be putting into the vehicle. For example, an Audison Thesis tweeter cannot fit into a stock location on a Ferrari FF tweeter location. So elements of customization would need to be done to be able to allow for that type of product to be installed. So that's kind of your higher frequencies, and then moving down into mid-bass, which is normally positioned in the bottom of a door. So you'll find a larger speaker like we have here, a 6.5-inch mid-bass in the bottom of a door, creating kind of that lower, deeper sound. And this is where kind of, I normally say kind of the warmth of sound comes from, and a decent mid-bass will be able to deliver that. However, even just picking this up, this is relatively light. So now moving on to lower frequency. So where we've got a designated sub in a vehicle, and many cars don't actually have that in a vehicle. However, the Ferrari FF does, and this is actually located in a rear quarter panel on the left-hand side in the boot area. So as you can see by the actual sub itself, pretty much, well, very, very light, but quite a weird shaped sub as well. And when you're talking about lower frequencies, it's very, very important. There's a couple of things that I always talk about when talking to clients. And one of the key things with bass is, yes, your product needs to be great. Yes, your amplification and power needs to be great. However, one of the fundamental parts that people look over is something that's very, very simple, but it's basically how it's secured. So because as you go down, and you can kind of tell by how this is done. So a 3-inch mid-range, for example, it's got 3 holes to bolt this down to a vehicle. As you go lower down and deeper in frequency ranges, I move over to 4 holes to secure the speaker. And then moving over to this, we've got a few more. The fixing points that we actually use when bolting down a speaker are very, very important. As you go lower down in the frequency range, generally speaking, there's 2 things that are happening. One thing, you are sending more power to the system. Second thing that you're generally doing is also moving a lot more air, because the cone is bigger and you have what's called more excursion of a cone. The cone is moving further and back more than, for instance, a 3-inch mid-range. And that's solely the engineering behind the actual size of a cone. This is smaller, it can't move as much as this speaker, and this speaker can move a lot more than these 2. So with that, bear in mind that you're moving more air, having a speaker bolted down, and there's plenty of times when I've actually done an install where people have had a sub box installed, for example, and one of the biggest issues is that it's just not bolted down correctly. There are certain subs out there like the Prima 10-inch active sub. On some applications we do bolt it down, some applications we don't. So where clients need to be able to remove it really easily and really quickly, then we don't bolt it down. However, on certain vehicles, like we just completed the brand new Ford Transit, we actually bolted that down underneath the seat because the client never needed to remove it, and it just helps with that bass response in the vehicle. So that's just down, again, customer's choice whether they want that or not, and how much bass they're actually expecting from that particular product. However, on this particular solution, we're actually going to be adding in the Hertz Melee Pro shallow mounted sub, and this is a lot heavier than what that is, and this is just the sub alone, bear in mind. We've actually got, obviously this has got the whole housing with it, so I can lift that up with one hand very easily, and this is that's a two-handed lift. That is very, very heavy in comparison to what this is. This is basically a shallow mounted design. So with a sub, you've got a couple of different options. You've got ones that are shallow mounted, you've got different sizes, and you've also got different applications for how it's going to work in a vehicle. So on this particular application, the reason why we selected the Hertz Melee Pro shallow mounted sub, first of all, is because of actual physical box size. This is again down to personal preference on the install. Client wanted to go for quite a discreet look and having it on that side panel, similar area to where this is, without taking up too much space in the boot area. So this is really important because the shallow mounted sub actually doesn't need that much space. So we built a custom sub box out of fiberglass that will allow for this sub to sit in a very similar location to where this one sat before. So you've got different options in terms of sub sizes as well. They've got 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, and some people in the States that are watching, you love your 15-inch subs. So Generally speaking, here in the UK, most of our clients are going down the route of an 8, 10 or 12. They're kind of the key normal options that most people normally go for. There's not too many options for 15s in this country. And we're using a lot of these shallow mounted ones at the moment. Reason is because the number of supercars and performance cars we get in, like in my workshop right now, I have 6 supercars in right this very minute. So with the actual level of work that we're doing on these supercars and adding in subs into vehicles, most of our clients want that kind of OEM plus look, and that's where these sorts of products really do come in. The weight and the way a sub is built and bolted down makes a hell of a difference to the system as well. Like, you can see the number of screw positions that are actually on this sub in particular. This sub is then going to be bolted down incredibly securely, and then the sub box will be bolted down to the vehicle itself on factory lug points, which means that there's no damage done behind the scenes. Same with all the products that we've got going into the vehicle, they're all fully reversible. So obviously, like here, we've got a 3-inch mid-range from the Hertz Legend range, and then here we've got the 3-inch mid from the factory speaker. So what we've actually got here, the speaker size is actually the same, however obviously the adaptation points are different. I've got 4 holes here and I've got 3 positions here. So what we're actually going to be doing is 3D printing an adapter that will sit on top of the dashboard, and this involves a full dash removal, which is no easy task, and we'll pop up a little picture here of us doing that. But we do this a lot of the time, so it's all natural to us for us to be doing it. But as you can see here, the fixing points are different. So we've 3D printed a bracket that will sit into those factory lug points, mount this speaker in, and then it can all be reversed with no damage done behind the scenes. Same with all of the components that are going into the vehicle, same thing applies. Same with the sub box, it can all be taken out and bolted in and basically go back to stock whenever our client wants to sell the vehicle, and he moves the investment of these speakers over to the next vehicle. Obviously, the components that we've got here, I mean, the Hertz Legend 6.5-inch mid-base, as you can see on the cable side, it's all going to be cloth taped. We're going to have XT60 connectors and XT30 connectors, which are really cool little connectors that we use, and now a lot of people are copying us with it, but it's what it is with the power of social media. XT30s on the XT60s on the Hertz Legends, and then you've got the Hertz Legend tweeted with the XT30 connector because the cable is a little bit thinner. So with this, we've got high grade connections grade wiring running to it, soldered joins onto it. We're not using bullets, and then that is then all connected with heat shrink, so it's all protected. And then we're going to use a water guard to protect these products as well. It's really important that the products are protected for longevity of them. You're investing into the gear. It's our job to make sure your products last for your entire lifetime. You can move the kit from next car to next car and it'll always sound amazing. So hopefully you gauged a little bit of an insight in terms of some of the products that we've got going on here, and also learn a little bit more about car audio, especially on a Ferrari FF. So now it's time to we've covered a good overview of that. I want to now go through and actually put it to the test and actually sit down with you, and you get to listen to the before and after of the stock system versus the Cambridge car audio treatment. So that is the install complete. I want to go through and actually sit down with you and listen how the system sounds right now.
You could say anything, but it could mean
it's got so much clarity, depth, and this isn't even with the final tune on.
But isn't it sickening? You can say you're in love with them, but it won't mean anything at all. But that's not your fault. Life's funny like that. You lose one thing, get another one back. You thought you knew, but it wasn't no fact. Known them your whole life, but it was all an act. There's no meaning, but like in the best of ways, you could go 100 days without really doing anything. You could say anything, but it could mean
there's your problem.
Cause you said it to the right person, and they needed the compliment. But isn't it sickening? You can say you're in love with them, but it won't mean anything at all. But that's not your fault.
hopefully you guys have learned a little bit more today. I'm so happy with the final results, and I'm sure our client will be as well. So thank you once again for watching. I'll see you on the next one.